Hello, hello. Welcome to the Toxic Leadership Podcast. It's Dr. Kevin Sansberry. And today I'm so excited for our conversation with Miss Selena Rezvani. The conversation is on the greedy jobs and what that means, and talking about, how are we prioritizing ourselves in these jobs that, are quote unquote greedy. So we're going to bring Selena on and talk about, what that means, what experiences she has, and some insights. When people hear that topic or the conceptualization of a greedy job, how do you define that? What does that mean?
Sometimes they're called extreme jobs,
Mhm.
and what they tend to be is all consuming. High intensity role, often high prestige, high reward, but very high expectation on the
Yeah.
other side. So things that come to mind, law, entertainment,
Mm,
media,
mm,
tech, definitely Wall Street.
mhm.
But I wanna say, even if you don't fit into one of those categories, there are so many other roles that can feel greedy and be greedy,
Mhm.
particularly, jobs that ask a lot of you after hours, or medical staff. They have a job that is serving others by design. People
Yeah.
don't only get sick from 9 to 5, right? So,
Sure, sure.
um, you know, there's a lot of reasons we might see jobs be extreme. People out there, they themselves haven't had a job like this. They probably know somebody who has. Um, but I think honestly, the pandemic has blurred the lines.
Some of the aspects of what you just described, I also see it in, let's say someone used to be an hourly employee and got promoted into a salary position for the first time, and
Mhm.
then expectations shift dramatically and they're required to work like 50, 60 hours a week and stuff like that, to situations where your job is on call or you feel like you're on call because you're getting calls after hours in non-life or death situations.
Yeah.
Like why am I on call? Why am I on call on a Saturday and I'm not even it will be fine. It can wait till Monday, but like whether it's the personalities at work or just the job design in itself, people feel like they're on call all the time for jobs that don't require it.
You're absolutely right, and isn't it curious, like, how these norms get
Mhm.
made and then
Mhm.
perpetuated? It's not that somebody sits us down and says, "Kevin, here's the rule book with all these rules in it." It's
Yeah.
not usually that clear cut, is it?
Right.
We
Right.
just sense, "Oh, somebody's frowning upon us taking a sick day." "Ooh, did you see that comment that the leader made when so and so said they couldn't travel at the last minute?" So we pick up what's right or wrong in
Yeah.
the particular workplace from a lot of these little cues, a lot of which aren't spoken.
Right. So another cue I got. I feel guilty for leaving at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Like I'm done. I'm kind of like need to go home. Got to go get family stuff. I feel guilty for leaving at 5 o'clock.
Mhm.
I feel guilty for using sick time.
Mm.
I feel guilty for using bereavement time. And so like that greedy job phenomenon, you're right about the cues. There are a lot of cues and things to look for. Maybe I want to go to a new organization, or maybe I'm in a current organization and I'm listening to this and I'm like, you know what? Am I in a greedy job? Because I just thought this was normal. What are some of those flags that people should look for?
One is excessive grind and hustle kind of culture. That
Mm,
that is seen as normal within the culture. That
hmm.
could entail working 60 hours a week where people don't even blink at that.
Yeah.
Okay. It could be encouraging FaceTime on site, like that you can never have enough FaceTime. And
Mm,
so, therefore, let's 3x that wherever we can.
yeah.
Um, it could be here's one, just tight deadlines or
Hmm.
these situations where people have to greatly inconvenience themselves, bend over backwards, for client requests, and that's
Yeah.
normal. I worked at a workplace like this, and those, Kevin, became our hero stories at the
Yeah.
company. It was like John who parachuted into a satellite office on a weekend and like fixed the bleeding business unit over
Hmm.
there.
Hmm.
And it's like we need to be careful what we celebrate because we're
Yeah.
sending a loud message, when we bring those heroes up. But I think another red flag can be lots of travel or unpredictability.
Hmm.
You know, a lot of people appreciate or need some level of predictability in their lives. When
Hmm.
you hear someone say, "Oh, can you believe it? John is taking a day off again?"
Hmm.
we learn
Mhm.
a lot. We learn a lot from those little moments about what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. I've also seen organizations where they lure you in with like maybe they pay above average
Mhm,
and or they have things like unlimited vacation time,
mhm.
but then you get into the culture, nobody even uses the vacation time because of that guilt and all that kind of stuff. So it's like
Yeah.
a bait and switch almost,
Yeah.
where it's like we built this organizational culture and climate that's like, oh, it's all this, but no, we want you to be here like the majority of your life. Like, don't, it's not 40 hours, this is a 60-hour. And I'm not saying, and I know you're not saying, we're not saying like occasional ambiguity in travel schedule,
Mhm, mhm,
occasional over, you got to work over 40 hours. That's normal. I mean, that's life.
mhm.
We're saying the words norms,
Yes.
where it's normative. And so it's important for us to like distinguish that. One thing I want to hear more about is that hero culture. You talked about how like we
Mm.
prop up certain people and certain
Yes.
behaviors. Give me more ideas of like, and listeners, what does that look like? What could that look like in the culture? Because that lore becomes the culture and it gives us signals.
It does, and it becomes like what we aspire to, just
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of companies have like a vision and a mission statement, and
Yeah.
the vision is aspirational and lofty.
Yeah.
Well, these stories become that too, because we're all perceptive to
Mm-hmm.
what's getting rewarded. Employees are very smart and aware about who and what is being talked about well, praised, acknowledged. It's just like if you grew up with multiple siblings like I
Yeah.
did. You're very aware of who's getting, positive reinforcement, and you want some of that. And
Yeah.
that's human nature. So I think the stories can celebrate different things. And I find in most of the companies I work with, they're not fully aware of
Mm-hmm.
what their stories are until we ask employees. Like I'll ask in focus groups, what are some of the hero stories around here? What do they involve? They often involve the opposite of work life balance.
Yeah. Totally.
You know? So,
Totally.
heroics that involve going above and beyond, bending
Mm.
yourself into a pretzel to make a customer happy,
Mm-hmm.
um, driving a package all the way from Philly to Newark in the middle of the night, because, it was what the situation called for and it was an emergency. Look, again, as you said, it's wonderful when you can have those above and beyond moments and take pride in that as a culture, as an employee, wonderful.
Yeah.
But when it is the norm to self-sacrifice,
Mm.
that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
When your employee's health is on the line,
Right.
their well-being is on the line, when you're asking them to do things that aren't sustainable,
Mm-mm.
you know,
No. I
to
had
to
a
human rhythms.
Yeah, yeah, and to that point of the human rhythms, I had an example where I was doing focus groups, and when I talked to women in the workplace, they were saying like, yeah, around here we like kind of don't want to get pregnant because we've seen like
Mhm.
other women in the workplace, their career kind of tumble
Yeah.
as a result of that leave that they took or whatever, like that's like they saw the harm that happened to someone else. And
Mhm.
so they like told me in confidence, like, yeah, we just don't expect to have kids here. Like, and it
Yeah.
wasn't even, and I'm gonna just be frank, this wasn't even a place where it was like travel, travel, travel. It wasn't even that
Mhm.
kind of place. It was like a regular place, like non-travel, non-consulting. It wasn't even like that kind of role. But those hero stories that got lifted up and how we treated people when they take off time, that's the norms that they abide by. And there's no book and there's no manual that said if you get
Yeah.
pregnant, yada yada. Obviously, to your point.
But you're right, those stories,
Hmm.
like, we learn a lot from those,
Yeah,
since the
what
beginning
to
of
do,
time,
what not
right?
to do.
What not to do, what's
Hmm.
frowned upon. I'll give you just one more example of a way that we create those hero stories. I had a piece of content go viral, and I was so surprised because it was about me and my process on learning how to take vacation time and how to
Mm,
train my manager
I
to
saw that.
see
Yeah,
that, yeah,
yeah.
as a regular occurrence. And so many people wrote to me, Kevin, and they said, you know what? They give awards at my company for presenteeism, AKA not
Wow,
ever missing a day.
wow, really? That's like elementary school.
Yeah, but it's like
What?
really putting on a pedestal, being bulletproof, being a
Yeah,
robot, being a productivity machine
yeah.
over being human.
Human. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm fascinated by that because I would have hoped, the COVID pandemic and how jobs have, had to morph in
Mhm.
some cases. We are seeing the pendulum swing a little further back for some organizations and some industries. But I would have thought that like this whole being human at work thing would have stuck. I was convinced a little bit. I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
new work world.
Mhm.
But now when I say the pendulum swings, I'm now talking to folks that are sharing stories that you're sharing about the hustle culture's back and it's like still here, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So what is the effect on people as we think about working in these greedy jobs or working in these
Mm.
environments that kind of are stripping away a little bit of your humanity like this? What is the effect on people? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it helps to realize, you know, one thing that came on the scene that's really been a blessing and a curse, and it's communication technology.
True.
Things
Yep.
like Slack, right? And
Hmm.
Messenger and all of these ways we keep in touch and
Hmm.
stay up on the latest and don't experience FOMO, right? Or fear of missing out on even the smallest thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's obviously advanced, and accelerated how we can work, but it's made things easy, maybe too easy
Too easy. Yeah.
to stay in touch, to just log on for a few minutes and check. So I want to acknowledge that. But listen, it affects so much of our lives. And this is personal for me. It's not just a work thing.
Mm.
I lost my dad when I was 13, and he passed away young of a massive heart attack. And he was, Kevin, like the dictionary definition of a type A, high
Mm.
stress workaholic, So, like, it's so personal to me as someone who also has my own kids who I want to be there for,
Yeah.
um, that, like, we can do better by people than this. We can do better by people. One of the things it affects is your health. We know from research, extreme workers, jobs, people with greedy jobs, they sleep less at night. They're
Yep.
more prone to overeat. Um, they tend to take less time off.
Hmm.
Something like 42%, of extreme workers take 10 days or less off a year, and
Mm.
they are more likely to cancel vacation. Here we are possibly rewarding them at work with
Yeah.
presenteeism trophies. There's a big cost they're paying. One of the biggest things my clients, I do executive coaching, I know you do too. One of the things my clients share with me is they will say there are great personal costs in my relationships to my job. I have
Mm.
heard that more times than I can count. It has meant walking away from my daughter, my son, my partner, and choosing this, choosing the report, the project, and
Wow.
that it's cost them dearly in some cases. I'd say one other thing besides your health, your mental health, your well-being, these are all important things. We can't sustain overwork. Like last time I checked, all of us only have so many hours in a day,
Yeah.
so much energy that's not renewable in a
Hmm.
day. But I think another thing is for couples who are trying to like distribute work equitably in their home, like housework or childcare or elder care or something like that, it makes that very hard now
Mm.
too, because you have somebody with this all-consuming greedy job. And so any hope of equitable distribution kind of goes out the window when you have that.
Got it. Yeah. And so then the long term effects, both personal and professional, are kind of clear. I think there are opportunities to change this,
Mhm.
and because as we said, there's no policy that says we have a greedy job. So technically, that means you don't need a policy to change anything. It's like you just got it's a behavior, it's a mindset thing. One of the things that happens in organizations is like I got promoted because I like played ball in the greedy
Mm,
job game, and so everybody else should go through that too. That's the rite of passage.
mhm.
And so I
Yeah.
would say leaders have opportunities to make shifts. Even if you went through it, you had to go through it, that's fine.
Mhm.
But I think leaders have the opportunity to make small changes in their work environments. What small change could I do to reduce this pressure of overwork?
One thing all of us can do, who are more experienced or seasoned or
Yeah.
older, if you want to say it that way, is like don't give the side eye to everybody who's young their
Hmm.
ideas. I see that happen. I've seen it happen for decades, being people rolling their eyes at quote unquote entitled millennials, or how on earth can Gen Z think they're going to get far with that work ethic? I think that's all wrong. I think if anything, there's a little jealousy. I think there's sometimes a feeling of how dare you ask for
Mm-hmm.
what I don't have the guts to ask for,
Or
you
didn't
know?
have the guts to ask for when I was in your position.
Yes,
Yep. Yep.
exactly. And maybe like what I got indoctrinated into accepting,
Hmm.
as normal. So I think that's one thing, is like bring younger workers into these conversations, even center them instead of kind of marginalizing them and pushing them into the back row.
Yeah.
I think another thing people can do, and I'm not the first to suggest this, is have leaders leave loudly at the
Mm.
end of the workday. You talked about, Kevin, like feeling not good, guilty about leaving at 5 p.m.
Hmm.
I bet that would feel different if the leaders, the models, the people with the most kind of authoritative power
Yeah.
left loudly, and you saw them saying, I'm leaving to go to
Hmm.
Johnny's baseball game.
Hmm.
I'm leaving to play a soccer game,
Hmm.
whatever it is. And you saw them like fully transition into the other part of their life, rather than this like murky, I'll always be on. I can talk in the car, and then I can talk at home, and then I can, you know what I mean?
I'll talk to you after the kids go to sleep. And
Yes, and I'll like find a phone booth somewhere where I can be quiet and
yeah.
talk to you on the train. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, and we end up modeling these things for people, that it's what's expected, it's normal. Here's another one. When you go on vacation, go all the way off the grid when it comes to work. Trust people around you to do their jobs, and show them that this is what it looks like when you go on vacation. You are free to fully unplug. There's no double meanings. There's no put on an office, out of office responder, but secretly be checking into email. You just leave and you
Yeah.
trust people. It's kind of this like revolutionary idea.
Amazing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think another thing we can do as leaders is talk about our mistakes, our learnings, like our aha moments around managing work life, burnout. I have made 1,000 mistakes in my own life, and I learned so much from hearing about other people's mistakes or victories too. One of my biggest mistakes in the big part of my early career was tying my self-worth to productivity,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
That's a
to
big one.
being, yeah, this productivity machine, and that was the dial that told me how great I should feel about myself
Mm.
that day, you know? Um, and I would just say I really respect a workplace that doesn't imply work is the most important thing.
Yep.
I really appreciate a workplace where the leaders come out and say to people, take care. Like,
Hmm.
take care of yourself, take care of your relationships, take care of your family first, instead
Yeah.
of putting it on you the other way. Like,
No, that's really important. And about leaders leaving loud, and organizations saying it, it's all about modeling. And in the research, there's this concept called emotional contagion that
mhm,
exists, and how that what that implies is essentially, people look for that emotion in the work. They look at it. We look at the behaviors in the workplace because I don't want to be the odd person out. I don't want to be the
mhm,
one, And so if we see the leader leaving at 5, other people will start to do that same behavior too. And I think leaders need to understand that their behavior, I always tell leaders that I coach, you're always in the spotlight. And
yeah,
so you missing that recital, somebody else is going to view that as, oh, I need to do that too.
yes,
So just be mindful of behaviors. And then what you said was important on the employee's end. Speak up for your own self. Find ways to do that in a safe, psychologically safe way, because we have to be our own advocates, right? Our best advocates is ourselves. So,
We do,
mhm.
and, the one other thing we didn't talk about, we're kinda talking about leaders up here and ourselves. I
Yeah,
think managers
sure,
make a big impact too, I think
absolutely.
one of the simple things managers can do is when somebody comes to you and says, "I need next Thursday off,"
Hmm.
go out of your way to make that possible,
Yeah,
and here's the kicker, don't ask them why.
yeah, yeah,
Don't
yeah,
say why. If they wanna tell you, they will tell you, but
sure.
it kinda sets this precedent that, like, every time you wanna lay on your couch and eat chips and take a day off, which you've earned,
Yeah,
or go to the doctor and get an embarrassing procedure you don't wanna tell me about, or some other mundane thing.
right.
It sets up
Yeah.
this idea that, like, you should always tell me, and
Well,
that's not right.
and it's sending a signal that like the manager or the leadership in the organization has a right to prioritize what's important in my life. And,
Yes.
and so it's like, no,
Yes.
like, why do I need to tell you why I'm taking off? Like, what is the point of PTO if
Yeah.
I gotta if you get to like gatekeep it like that? That's
Yes, it's
odd to me.
called personal for a reason, right?
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so let me pivot a little bit because I know a lot of people maybe in the job search and the job market.
Mhm,
Let's talk about things to look for. If I'm looking for an organizational culture and a job to get into, what are some flags that I might want to look for that might sound like that's awesome, but no, hey, watch out for that. I'm gonna
mhm,
start. So I've talked to people and I've seen other people talk about this. I didn't make this up, but like that
mhm.
whole notion of like fast-paced work environment in the job posting, I've told people like to ask, what does that mean? You're like,
Oh,
what
that's
does that
good.
mean? I saw that in the job posting. What does that mean? Give me what are some things I should look for to see if I'm going to agree job or not?
One that I dislike a lot is using superlatives
Mm,
to describe, like, what you want from a job. So instead of saying, like, somebody proficient in data analysis or with strong data analysis skills, like a rock star.
ninja.
Um Yes, genius level. I mean, I've seen these words. It
Yeah.
sounds like out there and, oh, maybe only in this industry. No, you would be
Mm-mm.
surprised. And it's not to say we should settle or put the bar low somehow for
Right.
people, but people understand what strong data analysis skills means. You're still
Yeah.
qualifying it. To me, that's a flag around expectations.
Yeah.
What exactly are you thinking this person's gonna do? Because it already sounds like you're coming in with the expectation that they be like the Einstein of,
Mm-hmm.
whatever field. Um, so I think that can be one. Do they actually have their feet on the ground? Do they speak in human speak, Kevin? That's an important one.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Just human speak, like,
Yeah.
or is it very professionalized, all jargon, all buzzwords, you
Mm.
know? I really appreciate that when I see human speak put in a way that's not amped up to rock star
Mm-hmm.
level.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. So, folks, look for the human speak.
Yeah.
Definitely important. Because I find that, and actually, some of the research talks about how like the jargon and those shortcuts alienate other people and
Mhm,
create environments of othering.
mhm.
And so it's important, as we think about how do we speak in plain language, how do we speak in ways where we're inclusive and equitable in the way
Yeah.
we talk. That sends a signal. That sends a
It
signal.
does, because we
Yeah.
don't all value ourselves the same, and you're right.
Right.
Um, what one person might call proficient, someone else might call intermediate and rate themselves that way. So,
Excellent. Yeah.
all the more reason, to say, "I'm talking about 3 to 5 years of
Mhm.
experience,"
Right.
or
Yeah,
you know what I
exactly.
mean? But I think another one, Kevin, and I'm very curious about your POV on this, is
Hmm.
is like, we're like a family here.
Oh, don't get me started. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I did some work in that. I actually did research in that one. One of the things that comes up with the we're like a family piece is two things. We're like a family. People tend to treat you like y'all have a deeper relationship than y'all even have.
Mm.
So like, don't talk to me like that. Like we're not.
Mhm,
I'm an
mhm.
employee. I'm not your son or daughter. And so like
Yes.
that's what happens there. And then B, um, there's this thing called paternalism in leadership, where leaders take a paternalistic mindset over their employees. So what that implies is, I know what's best for you.
Mm.
And so I will ask you, why are you taking time off? I will ask you,
Mhm.
those very intrusive
Mm.
questions. I tell leaders, because I've actually coached some family organizations who are extremely toxic, but let's not go there. But I'll tell leaders all the time that, like, that whole "we're like a family," that's jargon too, because what you're really trying to say is, we have a high trust environment, we care for
Mhm.
one another. Say that. I'd rather you say that. Say
Yeah.
the thing.
That's a
That
great piece of advice.
Yeah.
That is such a good piece of advice, and that brings a lot of nuance to that family thing, because when I do create content or talk to people about this, I don't know about you, but I'll get some pushback. People will sometimes say, "Well, what's wrong with?"
Hmm.
Or, "Isn't that nice?" And like you said, I think there's a different intention
Yeah,
underneath it,
it is.
but
It is.
but
And it's
again,
so it's an assumption. What if I don't have a good relationship with my family?
exactly, we don't all think about family the same way.
Yeah.
We really don't. In fact, there are so many different ways to think about family, and for a lot of people, it's not an empowering image. So, you might not wanna overlay that as the
Mhm.
metaphor of choice, but I think what you said too is so important, that, like, we're at will employees for the most part
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
work, um, and family's not like that. You are born into it, and
We're
so
into it.
it's real case of apples and oranges, I
It
think.
is. And you have, and to drive that point further, work is a choice. I can choose to work here. You can choose to not fire me or lay me up. Like, it's all a choice. So
Mhm.
then think about how deep your organization or industry might have real economic issues. And I'm saying real economic issues, where I mean, like, people taking pay cuts and we have to do layoffs. We
Mhm.
must. How difficult is a real decision like that if I'm running around with this family mentality? And
Yeah.
s- and so I just think it'd be easier on all of us if we were just more truthful and direct. I expect us to have trusting relationships. I can say that. I can expect that. It doesn't mean we have it, but I can say that.
Yeah.
And I think being more specific around it, and not to your point of, like, having like rock star, ninja, family, like those. What does that
Mhm.
mean? What does that mean to
Yeah.
everybody? So yeah, to the point of speaking human and plainly and clear. I think that's really important for people to think about.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think one other thing you can tell from a job ad, maybe not everyone, but a
Hmm.
good amount, is
Hmm.
are they kind of looking at the whole person or
Yeah.
not in some
Yep.
of what they share about the company and like what they offer. Sometimes there's
Sure.
that little paragraph, and if it's all like ping pong and happy hour,
Mm.
that kind of tells you how they're looking at people versus if there's more of a whole human being approach, like they are talking about health benefits or they are sharing we do this for well-being and mental health. So be like perceptive about that. You're going to get a feeling one way or another, but it helps to be listening.
The one thing I think about with the whole ping pong culture is, and we're talking ping pong tables, literally. Some people in organizations they have money. They got money. They have high valuation. They got money, so they have money to spend on, like, affinities and different amenities. I mean, to say that's not culture. That's not like
Mhm.
culture at all.
Right.
And I think people need to realize, like, treat how we're treated, how we're communicated to, how we take off time. That's really what your culture is, because culture is defined as the unspoken norms and values of the company. All
Yeah.
this other stuff we talk about is really organizational climate, when you want to get really, if we're going to try to define it. And so
Mhm.
when we talk about culture, I think it's really important for anybody on this call and listening in to think about, what are those unspoken norms and rules, and what do people truly value in this company? Because
Yeah.
then that'll let you know really what kind of company do you work for. Is it a greedy job? Is it a more humanistic job? Where
Mhm.
are we?
That's beautiful. I think that's so true. And like most people, maybe not you because you're like a behavioral scientist. So you know this, but most people did not learn this
That's
in
true.
school.
Yep.
We do not learn as part of career readiness, like here's cultural norms. There's going to
Hmm.
be a lot of unwritten rules that are not in the manual.
Yep.
Here are some ways you can try to pick that up. more
Yeah.
quickly than just like getting your hand slapped because you did something wrong.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see like more resources for people to learn this,
Yeah.
and get educated about it, before they're like put in corporate America.
Sure. And to your point of like the unwritten piece, there's no way a company could write down everything about their culture. They're gonna write down what they want it to be typically, or
Mhm.
what the people in power think it is. But there's really not a way to like isolate the reality, really reality, because what is reality? So I think it'd be important, to your point, if organizations, like when I get hired at a company, give me like a, because people aren't taught this, give me like a guide of, during my onboarding process as I get hired here, what kind of questions should I be asking? What should I be looking out for? What are some things I should be, who should I talk to about learning? Like, give me what's my roadmap to learn about the culture versus you telling me what it is.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
I think that would be very, really powerful for people. It's kind of like I want my own narrative justice. Like, let me define what the
Mhm.
culture is to me versus you trying to give me this PR pamphlet about, oh, ping pong table here, dog, we bring puppies in on Thursday. Like,
Right. It's true, and I heard about one company, like a large company, where the employee resource group, like one particular group, took it
yeah,
upon themselves to
I love
create
that.
that to help onboard people, and they were
Right.
like, "These are the unspoken rules."
Yeah,
Like,
that's great.
we
That's
are trying to make it clear and to set you up to succeed, and I thought that was heroic
very
in
heroic.
its
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. So as we think about greedy jobs and the conversation that we had today, what words of wisdom would you want to leave our listeners with?
Every good thing does not need to be earned, particularly when it comes to rest, well-being, taking care of yourself.
Mhm.
Um, when we think about taking time off, for example, we think about it almost like a painkiller. We worked hard, we grinded really hard, and now our reward is this time off. It doesn't have to be like that. I like to think about it, and I encourage people to think about it more like this vitamin, not the
Mm.
painkiller, but the vitamin approach. You take it as this little fortifier to keep you healthy and strong. So, I just want to encourage listeners out there. It can be very tempting to save your time off, let's say, for one rainy day in the future. But I would recommend it's better spent using it to
Yeah.
enjoy your life, even in little bits, a long weekend here and there. So, no job is worth, hanging up who you are on the coat rack for. No job is worth giving up your dignity for, and certainly no job is worth sacrificing your health.
Mm.
So, may you find that right self-care routine that works for you, and I hope, you'll mentor somebody else to do the same.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I want to thank you. Thank you very much for those words of wisdom. Those would be definitely helpful for folks as they listen in. How can people reach you, get to hear some more about your content and things like that?
Yeah. Well, please come see me at you can find all my information on my website at selenarezvani.com. And one of the things I'm really excited about is I have a new book launching on May 9th
Mm.
about boosting that sense of belonging, confidence in yourself, even when the situation around you doesn't encourage that feeling. And so it's called Quick Confidence. It's
Mm.
available for pre-order now, and I hope you'll check it out and give me your feedback and let me know what you think.
Sure.
I just wanna say, Kevin, you are doing such a service, and what you put out into the world is such a value. So I just appreciate you, and I wanna say keep going.
Oh, well, thank you. You've been wonderful, and you've given out a lot of keys today as it relates to counteracting this greedy job problem. Follow Selena also on TikTok. She's awesome. Very, very useful content. I look at it every day, every time you post. So you keep at it as well. I
Mm.
want to thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And thank you all for listening to the Toxic Leadership Podcast. I'm Dr. Kevin Sansberry, signing out.